welcome to this deep dive.
Yeah.
If you are tuning in, you probably already know that the digital world is, well, it's more interconnected than ever before.
Oh, absolutely. It's totally enmeshed.
Right. But today, we are looking at a stack of research and industry analysis that asks a very pointed, almost uncomfortable question. Are your vendors your weakest link?
And that's a question that, it keeps a lot of business leaders awake at night. And for very good reason, honestly.
Yeah.
We've just moved way past the era where securing your own four walls was enough.
Exactly. So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack the massive risks associated with third-party vendors. You'll hear this called third-party security risk management, or TPRM. We are going to examine how different industries regulate these really complex relationships. And most importantly, we're going to distill the practical steps you can take to build a truly resilient vendor ecosystem.
Which is so critical today.
Okay, let's unpack this, because this isn't just some dry compliance lecture. This is a fascinating look into the invisible digital threads that connect literally every modern business.
It really is an invisible web. The modern business landscape relies completely on third parties now.
Yeah, completely.
We are talking about cloud providers, managed service providers, payment processors, marketing agencies.
And countless independent contractors, too.
Right. Businesses are essentially outsourcing massive chunks of their operations.
Which makes sense from a business perspective. It accelerates innovation, it drives efficiency, and it lets companies focus on what they actually do best.
Exactly.
But the reality is that this expanding ecosystem introduces massive cybersecurity, privacy, and operational risks.
Yeah.
You are basically adopting the risk profile of every single company you do business with.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is really about realizing that your security perimeter doesn't end at your own corporate network anymore.
No.
A vulnerability in just one single vendor can trigger a devastating chain reaction. We've seen this play out in the real world time and time again.
Oh, absolutely.
Look at some of the most historic data breaches of the last decade. Often, the hackers didn't break through the main company's billion-dollar firewall. They found a side door.
Like the infamous Target breach from years ago. That is the classic example everyone in the industry points to.
Yeah, textbook case.
Hackers didn't compromise Target's corporate servers directly. They compromised a third-party HVAC vendor.
The people managing the air conditioning.
Exactly. The company that managed their heating and cooling. That vendor had network access just to monitor temperatures. And hackers used those stolen credentials to pivot into Target's payment system.
It's wild.
They compromised millions of credit cards just through the HVAC system.
It is a stark warning about the sheer fragility of this ecosystem. A single third-party vulnerability can lead to catastrophic data breaches, complete operational disruption, severe regulatory penalties.
And long-lasting reputational damage.
Right. It is a compounding crisis. You can spend your entire IT budget locking down your own systems, but if you aren't managing your vendors, you are exposed.
To put this into a real-world perspective, think about it like this. It's like you just spent a fortune installing a state-of-the-art security system on your house.
Okay, I like this.
You've got the 4K cameras, the biometric locks, motion sensors on every single window. But then you turn around and hand out copies of your front door key to your dog walker, your plumber, and the delivery driver.
Right.
If the dog walker loses that key at the park, your multi-million-dollar security system is entirely useless.
That is a perfect analogy. And regulators across the globe have realized that too many organizations are handing out digital keys without checking to see if those vendors actually have secure pockets.
Yeah, exactly.
Regulators and industry bodies have responded by imposing strict third-party security expectations. The philosophical shift here is massive. Regulators no longer accept ignorance as an excuse. You simply cannot outsource your liability.
So let's look at how that plays out in the heavy hitters of compliance, starting with the healthcare sector. When you consider the physical value of a stolen medical record on the dark web.
Oh, it's incredibly lucrative for criminals.
Because it often contains social security numbers, medical histories, billing info. We are talking about protected health information, or PHI.
And the frameworks governing it reflect that extreme sensitivity. The bedrock there is IPA.
The Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act.
Exactly. The HIPAA security rule demands that covered entities ensure any vendor handling PHI implements appropriate safeguards. This is enforced through strict legal documentation called Business Associate Agreements, or BAAs.
Right.
You absolutely must execute these BAAs with any vendor that interacts with PHI. It legally binds the vendor to your security standards.
And the stakes got considerably higher with the HITECH Act. This was a massive shift because HITECH extended liability directly to the business associates themselves.
Yes, that was huge.
It also expanded breach notification requirements and increased enforcement penalties. The message was crystal clear. If you touch healthcare data, whether you are a hospital or the hospital's cloud storage provider, you are on the hook.
Precisely. To navigate this, the industry relies on comprehensive assurance mechanisms. Haysai Trust CSF is a major one because it acts like a massive aggregator.
Right. It pulls everything together.
Yeah, it pulls together HIPAA, NIST, ISO 27000 and other standards into one demonstrable assurance mechanism. Along with guidance like NIST SP 866, which specifically targets vendor risk management in healthcare, it creates a very tight safety net.
Now, comparing the value of medical records to direct financial assets, the transition to the financial services sector makes total sense. Money is the obvious, immediate target.
Without a doubt.
Financial institutions operate under some of the most mature, aggressive oversight regulations in the world.
What's fascinating here is the sheer volume of oversight governing the financial sector and how deeply it digs into the life cycle of a vendor. It begins with the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, or GLBA. The GLBA Safeguards Rule explicitly requires financial institutions to protect customer information and to ensure their service providers maintain adequate safeguards through due diligence and ongoing monitoring.
But it goes so much deeper than just the GLBA. You have comprehensive guidelines from the Federal Financial Institutions Examination Council and the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency.
FFIEC and OCC, yes.
They don't just want a checklist. They require banks to maintain risk management programs that cover everything from the initial planning and due diligence all the way through contract negotiation, ongoing monitoring, and termination procedures.
That termination piece is crucial. You have to know how to safely offboard a vendor. If a contract ends, how do you guarantee they have permanently deleted your customer's financial data?
Exactly.
State regulators are pushing this hard too. The New York Department of Financial Services has a regulation called 23 NYCRR 500, which takes a very aggressive stance.
Oh yeah, NYDFS is strict.
It demands formal, documented third-party cybersecurity policies. You can't just have good intentions. You need minimum cybersecurity standards explicitly written into your vendor contracts.
We're also seeing a massive shift in Europe right now with DORA, the Digital Operational Resilience Act.
Yes, DORA is changing everything.
It just took effect in January 2025, and it changes the game for financial institutions operating in the EU. DORA isn't just about data privacy. It is fundamentally about survival. It imposes incredibly strict risk management requirements for information and communication technology providers.
It mandates intense oversight of critical third-party providers. But perhaps the most impactful element of DORA is the requirement for operational resilience testing.
What does that look like in practice?
Financial institutions actually have to test how their systems would handle a severe disruption caused by a third-party failure. It elevates vendor management from a simple compliance exercise to a core component of business continuity.
Wow. Let's follow this money trail a bit further. For any business out there processing a transaction, which is almost everyone, we have to talk about the payment card ecosystem.
Oh, definitely.
PCI DSS, the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, dictates that if you touch cardholder data, your vendors must comply with their security standards.
And the latest version, PCI DSS 4.0, places a massive emphasis on continuous monitoring. You have to clearly allocate security responsibilities so there is zero ambiguity about who is protecting the credit card numbers at every single point in the transaction flow.
Then you have the government sector, where the stakes transition from financial ruin to national security.
Right, a totally different ballgame.
Under FISMA, the Federal Information Security Modernization Act, federal agencies are required to ensure their vendors meet intense cybersecurity requirements.
Vendors have to undergo formal security authorization processes. This often results in an authority to operate, or ATO. They are subject to continuous monitoring aligned with NIST controls, specifically NIST SP 853.
And if you are anywhere near the United States Department of Defense supply chain, CMMC compliance is non-negotiable.
Absolutely.
The Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification requires vendors handling controlled unclassified information, or CUI, to undergo formal security maturity assessments. You can't just fill out a self-assessment and promise you are secure. You have to continuously prove it through actual certification and periodic verification.
So we covered healthcare data, financial assets, payment cards, and government secrets. But everyday consumer data, just a person browsing the web or using an app, is driving an entirely separate wave of regulation.
Right, the heavy-hitting global privacy laws. The gold standard internationally is the GDPR in Europe. It requires organizations to ensure any third-party processing personal data meets strict privacy standards.
This is where data processing agreements come into play.
TPAs, right.
Yes, you have to establish these contracts defining data protection obligations. And crucially, GDPR makes cross-border data transfers a massive legal hurdle.
You can't just spin up a cheap server in another country and send EU citizen data there.
Exactly. Not without immense legal oversight and documented security measures.
We see that same momentum in the United States, specifically out of California, with the CCPA and CPRA. These privacy laws demand that businesses impose contractual obligations on their service providers to limit data usage and enforce consumer privacy rights right down the supply chain. If a consumer requests their data be deleted, your vendors need to delete it too.
It's all connected.
At this point, the alphabet soup of frameworks is getting a little overwhelming. HIPAA, GLBA, DORA, PCI DSS, GDPR, CCPA. How does an organization actually manage all of this without drowning in a sea of compliance paperwork and 500-tab Excel spreadsheets?
They rely on internationally recognized security frameworks. These frameworks act as a universal translator. Instead of reinventing the wheel for every single regulation, you assess a vendor against a standardized framework, which then satisfies the requirements of multiple different laws simultaneously.
SOC2 is probably the most common one you see in the corporate world, specifically SOC2 Type 2 reports. It's an independent audit that provides assurance regarding a vendor's controls related to security, availability, confidentiality, processing integrity, and privacy.
And the difference between a Type I and a Type 2 is critical here.
Oh, for sure.
A Type I just says, your security design looks good on paper today. A Type 2 means auditors actually observe the company for months to ensure they are actually following those procedures day in and day out.
Then there is the ISO family. ISO 27001 is a global standard for information security management systems, and it includes distinct requirements for managing supplier relationships.
There's also ISO 27018, which specifically provides privacy controls for cloud service providers processing personal data.
And some industries have even built their own highly specialized frameworks. For example, TISAX, the Trusted Information Security Assessment Exchange, is a framework built entirely for the automotive industry to evaluate supplier security.
Because cars are basically rolling computers now.
Exactly. So protecting that sensitive telemetry data requires a very specific set of controls. It just shows that no matter what your industry is, there is a gold standard framework out there for your supply chain.
So what does this all mean? We've outlined the problem, the regulatory pressure, and the frameworks. But how does an organization actually take all of this and build a resilient program? How do you operationalize this so it isn't just an annual paperwork drill?
That is the million-dollar question, and it is where we really need to spend some time today. The research gives us a highly actionable playbook. It distills effective third-party risk management into 4 strategic focus areas. 4 pillars to build a mature program. Let's break these down because this is the real operational meat of the issue.
Pillar number 1, risk-based vendor assessments. The most important philosophical shift you can make is realizing that you cannot treat all vendors equally.
Right. The company that waters the office plants shouldn't be forced to fill out the same 300-question cybersecurity spreadsheet as your cloud hosting provider. That just creates friction and wastes everyone's time.
Exactly. Organizations need to classify their vendors based on real quantifiable risk factors. You need a tiering system. You evaluate metrics like data sensitivity, are they handling public marketing copy, or highly confidential intellectual property?
Right.
You look at network access, do they have an active connection into your internal servers? You assess business criticality. If this vendor goes offline, does your business stop functioning?
You take those factors and put vendors into buckets. A Tier 1 vendor, like a payroll provider with deep integration into your HR systems, gets the full investigative treatment. You review their SOC2 Type 2, you conduct technical interviews, you run penetration tests.
Yep.
But a Tier 3 vendor, maybe a graphic design contractor who only accesses public brand assets, gets a streamlined basic check. This risk scoring model allows security teams to focus their limited resources where the danger actually is.
Which leads directly into pillar number 2, strong contractual security requirements. Handshakes and good vibes are not a security strategy. Your vendor contracts must explicitly define your security control expectations.
This is where the rubber meets the road. A standard service level agreement isn't enough. You need specific clauses. For example, rigid incident notification timelines. If your vendor gets breached on a Friday night, how many hours do they have to notify you?
That's a huge
The
point.
law might say 72 hours, but you might want to contractually demand 24 hours. You also need to outline who pays for the forensic investigation if their negligence causes your data to be exposed.
And crucially, those contracts must include right to audit clauses. You need the legal right to check their homework. If you suspect their security posture has degraded, a right to audit clause allows you to send in your own assessors to verify their controls.
Even with the big tech companies.
Well, negotiating these with massive tech giants can be difficult, but for the vast majority of your supply chain, these clauses are non-negotiable for a mature program.
That perfectly sets up pillar number 3, continuous monitoring. Honestly, this might be the most vital shift in modern security. Vendor oversight does not stop after the ink dries on the contract and the onboarding process is finished.
The traditional model was to assess a vendor once a year, but the threat landscape changes daily. A vendor might be perfectly secure in January, but by July, they might have suffered a massive staff turnover, delayed critical software patches, or changed their internal architecture.
Right.
A static point-in-time assessment decays very quickly.
So you can't just file the SOC2 report in a drawer and forget about it. Continuous monitoring requires action. Today, organizations are utilizing security rating platforms that constantly scan a vendor's external network for vulnerabilities, misconfigurations, or leaked credentials on the dark web.
It means setting up automated alerts. So if a critical vendor security score suddenly drops, your team is notified instantly.
And it involves tracking their public incidents and continuously evaluating their performance against those contractual requirements we just talked about.
Finally, pillar number 4, alignment with security frameworks. Adopting recognized frameworks like the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, ISO 27001, or PCI DSS, helps organizations completely standardize their security expectations across their entire vendor ecosystem.
It creates a shared language. If you tell a vendor, we require you to be secure, that means 100 different things to 100 different people.
Exactly.
But if you say, we require your access controls to align with NIST SKey 853, there is zero ambiguity. The vendor knows exactly what the expectation is.
And there is a massive return on investment here. When both sides speak the same framework language, the procurement and onboarding cycle is dramatically faster. Security stops being a roadblock to business and becomes an enabler.
When you synthesize all of this, the expanding digital web, the regulatory pressures, the real-world breaches, and these 4 pillars, the core takeaway is undeniable. Managing third-party risk can no longer be a reactive, check-the-box compliance burden.
By institutionalizing risk-based tiering, demanding tight contracts, implementing continuous monitoring, and speaking the language of standardized frameworks, you completely transform vendor management.
It becomes a strategic capability. It builds operational resilience, protects your bottom line, and deepens trust with your own customers.
It turns a massive, complex vulnerability into a well-managed operational strength.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Throughout this entire deep dive, we focused heavily on managing your direct vendors. We've talked about evaluating their security, tightening your contracts with them, and monitoring their performance. But there is one highly specific, incredibly complex risk area that often represents a massive blind spot for even mature companies: sub-processor management.
The vendors of your vendors. The nth party risk.
Exactly. You might have done all the grueling due diligence in the world to trust your direct cloud provider. You review their SOC2, you negotiated a great contract, you scan them continuously. But do you actually know who their vendors are? Who is processing your data further down the chain?
It's a scary thought.
If your highly secure Tier 1 vendor outsources their data backup to a completely unvetted third party or uses an insecure tool for customer support ticketing, your data is still exposed.
It forces you to look at the true, terrifying depth of the digital supply chain. You aren't just trusting your vendor, you're trusting everyone they trust.
It really does open up an entirely new layer of complexity. It's the ultimate lingering question to walk away with today. Do your current contracts give you visibility into the sub-processors handling your data? We want to encourage you to go back to your desk today and look at your own digital ecosystem with fresh eyes. Trace those invisible threads, not just to the first knot, but as far down the line as they go. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, stay secure, and we will catch you next time.